Who irritates you? Like, who drives you crazy? Who are the people in your life that are like micromanaging you and always trying to control everything, or that are just like really rigid and critical and rude and judgmental? Or who are the people that are just not really on top of things, and they're disorganized, and they're not really responsible? You can't really depend on them. Maybe they're a bit naive. Who are the people that are dominating all the conversations and kind of full of themselves in your life? Who are the people who are complaining and sad all the time, but not in like a way that really kind of drives your empathy, but in a way that just feels like they're just dragging you into their problems and their conflicts, and maybe they're always coming to you, but they're never actually being reciprocal and trying to like help you back. They're not interested in your life. They're just, maybe kind of in their own world. Who are the people that bug you? Who are the people that irritate you? Our irritation has a lot to teach us about our own values, our own personality, and has a lot to teach us. There's this Carl Jung quote that's been going around that I shared a couple days ago that goes something along the lines of, everything that irritates us has the ability to teach us something. And I think that's true. And, it has a lot to teach us in multiple respects. So I kind of want to break down two different things that irritation can teach us. And maybe the first one is where we need to be more compassionate. But the second one is maybe where we need to put up more boundaries. And both are important. So I want to kind of first maybe break down maybe an understanding of personality, because the truth is, depending on your just particular temperament and your personality, you're going to find different kinds of temperaments and personalities more or less frustrating. And the particularities, maybe the gut intuitions of different kinds of people as particularly frustrating. And so it's good to know. It's good to know what the personality temperaments are, because then it can actually give you like maybe a basis for knowing if something, if that person's just wrong, or that person's just kind of, rigid or irresponsible, or if that person just has maybe a different set of strengths and weaknesses than you do. And it's good to know that, because if you can really come to an understanding that, hey, you know what, you're different than me, but you have strengths as well as weaknesses, you have these assets as well as these detractors, then you know who to surround yourself with, because you're not an all-encompassing, deity. You have strengths and weaknesses too. So you need people around you that are strong in spaces that you're weak. And so it's an incredible gift to know personality temperament. So I want to break that down. We're going to break it down using the Big Five personality model. I'll give you just a really quick run through of it. So maybe the first personality line we'll think about is openness. So openness is openness to new experiences. These are people who love to travel and try new things, and they're really into novel, kind of spontaneous, exciting adventures. They're very driven by what they're inspired by, so they're very creative. They like art museums and poetry, and they're the kind of person who goes to a restaurant and orders the weekly special, or tries a different restaurant every time they go out, or they're the kind of person who buys a car based off of how it feels and how it smells, and if it has all the cool toys, and has automatic start and really good speakers. They're people who love music, so these are kind of people who are open to new experiences, and that's one spectrum. And then maybe another spectrum altogether would be a conscientiousness scale, and these people are really on the other side of things. These are people who are more organized and tidy, and they like consistency. These are the people who go to a restaurant and order the same thing, because if they're going to spend the $14, they're going to make sure it's something they like. And they're the people who buy a car because of its gas mileage and it's the right year, and they have a year and a model picked out, and that's the year model they're going to buy, and they have the money that they've been saving up that they're going to put towards the down payment or pay for it in cash, and they're not going over that. The salesman can't really push them one way or the other, and if they do, then they're gonna go somewhere else, because they have a pretty firm idea. They have a standard inside themselves that says, like, this is what I do. These are also people, though, who are very, very industrious. So people who you really want to have on your team because they work really hard. Again, they have that kind of inner standard of the kind of work that they do, and they're very, very driven. So you can also, or maybe you can already see the difference between openness and conscientiousness, and how those two people could be irritated with each other, right? It's like the conscientious people could look at open people and see, like, gosh, all this spontaneity and all this being inspired by this and then getting bored by that feels really inconsistent. And that feels kind of irresponsible and naive, and that feels really, chaotic. And so that could be there's a lot of negative emotion that comes up when dealing with open people. On the other end, open people look at conscientious people and are like, you are rigid and a buzzkill, and like, why aren't you getting enthusiastic and inspired by this? Are you dead inside? Like there's this, maybe it just kills them inside to like lean into the routine and the consistency without any sort of spark or spice, kind of mixed into everything. Now, the reality is that everyone's kind of a mix of both of these. So there's not just the open people and the conscientious people, but, it kind of varies depending on how highly or low you are in those different spectrums. Moving along, extroversion and introversion is another measure. We're all pretty familiar with that. So people who are like really, really social are going to have kind of particularities that introverts kind of find irritating, and vice versa. Agreeableness is another spectrum. So this would be people who are very conflict avoidant, people who are very just maybe aware of the social milieu and how their actions are being interpreted and how your actions affect other people. So very high in empathy, very high in being polite, very concerned with how things affect others. Now, vice versa. Like if you're disagreeable, you're someone who's very assertive, someone who's very honest, who's going to just tell it as it is. So these are like the lawyers. These are, people who are maybe high, like managers and people who hire and fire and just make the tough calls. Like it's really good to be, have a little bit of disagreeableness. There's strengths and weaknesses in both. And you can already see maybe how both sides kind of find the other people irritating. So the disagreeable people look at the open people and just like, gosh, just tell me what you think. Stop asking me where I want to eat. Where do you want to eat? Or, they just like put your foot down, like tell me what you need. And maybe people who are high in agreeableness don't really know what they need because they're so concerned with the needs of others. And so on the other end, the agreeable people look at disagreeable people and they're like, you're mean, or you're rude, or you're just like, you're not aware of how your actions are affecting other people or how what you said came across, because it's really off-putting. And so there's these conflicting temperaments that cause irritation. And then the last spectrum would be neuroticism. In neuroticism would be your sensitivity to pain. So specifically, if you like withdrawal from meeting conflict, or if things don't really go your way, if something jumps outside your expectations, or you encounter catastrophe, like your withdrawal and then your volatility, how angry or frustrated or irritable you get. So these are people who are more likely to feel emotions like sadness and despair and doubt and frustration and irritation and there's apathy. You're more likely to kind of feel those emotions. And people who are low in neuroticism are pretty just chill and easygoing, and they don't get very flustered. And even if stuff, doesn't go their way, they kind of roll with the punches. And so, there's a piece where I think that spectrum is often moralized into be like, well, if you're angry and kind of more that means you're fragile, and that means you're, kind of highly anxious and you need to be fixed, or you're bad, when in reality, like especially when neuroticism is paired with agreeableness, it makes someone very, very attentive to the pain of others. It makes someone very sensitive to how things affect other people. So there's a lot of strengths in that too. So already you can kind of see, depending on your temperament and your kind of mixture of the different personality spectrums, you're going to find particular personalities to be really irritating. And it's good to know. It's good to know what of those personalities are, so that when you encounter them, you can see them not just for the things that irritate you, but for their strengths. And it's likely that those people are really good at places that you need to grow. Maybe you need to be more organized. Maybe you need to let loose and have fun every once in a while. And you need people around you. So for example, like openness is really highly associated with like entrepreneurship. So when you look at entrepreneurs, the people who have the big ideas, the people who are trying to disrupt the industry, those are people who are high in openness. But they're not very good at running businesses. They're not very good at the details and kind of making sure that the infrastructure gets laid down in a way that's very consistent. And so they need conscientious people to come in and manage their businesses. So they have the big ideas and they kind of build the morale, and then they have conscientious people who are kind of on the second or third tiers down, making sure that everything falls into place and everyone gets paid at the end of the day. So that's good. That's good. And even if you think about it like in a romantic setting, like couples, it's actually good to have someone who's more conscientious or more open, or someone who, kind of there's a complementary kind of pairing, because like when you're buying a car, you need something that's, that has good gas mileage and it's, has a good value, but maybe it'd be nice to listen to some music and have a good stereo system in there too. And so there's a balance there that isn't just around security and safety and isn't just around novelty and fun, but there's a mixture that creates a pretty well-balanced experience. So now let's talk about boundaries though, because here's the reality is like when you're talking to someone who, maybe let's start with this. Let's say that there's somebody who is kind of that friend that things aren't really reciprocal. Like you're kind of just like, they're really needy and they go through a lot of hard times, or they're really like depressed and you're trying to help and you're trying to like be there for them and you're listening, but they never really call you when you need something, and they complain a lot, maybe they gossip a lot, they're really just negative, and you feel that. You feel like kind of dragged into that compulsively, but you also feel that it's not healthy. Now, the wrong thing to do in this instance would be like, well, they're of a different personality. Maybe they're higher in neuroticism. Maybe they're, this, that, and the other thing. I just need to be more understanding, because maybe you need to set up a boundary because you're getting exploited. The people who run into this problem most are people who are higher in agreeableness. But that doesn't mean that there just needs to be more understanding. There actually needs to be a boundary here, because it's not right that someone's taking advantage of you and just using you for your empathy, but not maybe making any ground or being reciprocal in that friendship. And you can tell this even in your own heart, because my guess is if you're in a relationship like that, you're not motivated to listen to them out of this like warm caring and this like this affection for them. It's almost like a fear. It's almost like this anxiousness, right? It feels like if I don't answer their text, then what will happen? Because they have nobody. They have no one but me, and so I need to be there for them. Or like, what would that mean about me as a person? Like, I'm an empathetic, kind person, and I can't just leave them alone. I can't just leave them out to dry. Like, I have to be there for them, and you feel this innate sense of responsibility, over it, and a fear of what that would mean about you if you advocated that responsibility. But the reality is that your time is a gift. You don't owe anybody anything. But the problem is when you give a gift over and over and over, it starts to feel like an expectation. And people start to depend on it. And that's when people can get really frustrated when you withdraw. But that doesn't mean that you owe them responding to every single one of their texts or spending these long hours on the phone, as they complain. You might actually realize that's not something that's adding to your life. And it might even be enabling them, because let's say that you're their only person in their world, and they just like kind of gush all of their negative life experiences out to you. It's like they need to learn how to create a more diverse group of friends. Maybe they need to take some responsibility for some stuff that's going on in their own life. And maybe they need mental health services. Maybe they need to talk to a counselor. But as long as they have you, they don't need to. As long as they have someone who will come on their beck and call, they don't need to look for other resources. So you actually putting in boundaries might be the thing that helps them the most, pushes them into actually seeking some help. And that's that difference we talked a couple weeks ago between empathy and compassion. Is like compassion has this wise vision for understanding how your actions are behaving within a context. And so boundaries in this case are actually the most loving thing to do and could promote, what's best for them. So think about that. I could give more examples, but for the sake of time, I'll just say this, like that boundaries, when you start to feel this invasion or this intrusion upon what you feel, and this intrusion upon, how different personalities are interacting with you, you can ask, should I be more compassionate? Or maybe is this a good opportunity to put in some boundaries? So those are my thoughts for this week. I'll talk to you next week. I'll be in the comments too, so let's chat about it.